Welcome back to Business Office Specialist. In today's video, we're going to be working with bulleted and numbered lists. Bulleted and numbered lists are great ways to organize lists or steps of information or instructions that makes it easy for your users to read and understand. For today's video, we're going to be working with a chocolate chip cookie recipe. So hopefully you're not doing this right before lunch. Before we get started, we're going to need to copy the recipe into our Google Drive. So remember, you can get the copy link for this file either in Canvas if you're taking the Canvas course, or in the description for this YouTube video. So I'm going to go up to where I have my link and make a copy to my Google Drive. Now sometimes making a copy takes just a second. If it doesn't come up right away, don't keep clicking the Make a Copy button, or you'll make 3 or 4 or 5 copies of the same document into your Google Drive. Now remember, when we make a copy of the cookie recipe, it's not going to show up in your boss folder. It's actually going to show up in your main drive. So really quickly, I'm going to go into my Google Drive, back out to my drive. And there's my cookie recipe. I'm going to click and drag that into my boss folder so that everything's nice and organized in the same folder so that I can find it later when it's time to turn stuff in. All right, so back to the cookie recipe. The last thing we're going to do with copying is change the name. So I'm just going to delete the copy of so that this is called cookie recipe. All right, so now I've completely copied it into my boss folder, changed the name, and we're ready to work with the document itself. So you can see that this recipe, like most recipes, has a list of ingredients and a list of instructions, but they're not very easy to read. They're all just kind of squashed together. So we're going to be working with those today to edit them and make them more user-friendly. The first thing that I'd like to do is work with the ingredients. Now, right now, the lines for the ingredients are spaced very closely together. That's the default inside of Google Docs. It works really nice when you're doing paragraphs of text. But here with a list, having them squashed so close together makes them hard to read. So I'd like to space them out just a little bit. So let's highlight from ingredients all the way to the bottom of the ingredient list. And we're going to change the line spacing for these lines. Line spacing is a command on your ribbon. It is right here. Looks like 3 lines with 2 arrows facing opposite directions. If I click on that symbol, I'm going to go in and change the spacing to be 1.5 instead of 1.15. So that's just going to give us a half space extra between each line, and you can see that that's going to make it a little easier for us to read the lines. And we've got plenty of room to work with, so we can do that. Now what I want to do is create a list. Now we can create either a bulleted list or a numbered list. Numbered lists are really great for steps or instructions. Bulleted lists are great for lists that aren't in any particular order per se. So our ingredients aren't in any real order. They're just a list of items. So a bullet list would work well here. So I'm going to re-highlight because I don't want the title ingredients to have a bullet on it. So I'm going to select just the ingredients themselves, and then click on the icon for a bulleted list. The icon for a bulleted list is right here. So I'm going to go up and click on that. And now I get these little dots to the side of each line. Those dots are called bullets. Now, bullets don't always have to be dots, although that's what we most commonly use. You can actually change the bulleted symbol to be several different other options if circles don't work for you. If you click on the little drop-down arrow right next to the bulleted list, you'll see all of the available options. So we can do circles, we can do little diamonds, arrows, stars. We're going to do checkboxes for this one, because if I'm printing out the recipe, one of the things that I like to do is go through ahead of time and make sure that I have all the ingredients so we could check them off the list as we go. So we're going to turn these into empty squares. So I'm going to select the square option for my bullets and change the bullets to little squares. All right, so now we've created a bulleted list and we've changed the bullets into squares. The next thing I'd like to do is create some kind of separation between the ingredients and the directions, just to kind of visually separate each of those pieces. To do that, we're going to put our insertion point right below the semi-sweet chocolate chips on that empty line between ingredients and directions. And we're going to create a horizontal line. Now, a lot of people, when they create a horizontal line, will just take the dash symbol next to 0 and they'll just push it a whole lot of times and create a big long line. And that works, but it takes a long time to do. There's actually an easier way to do that. Inside of Google Docs, if you go up to the menu at the very top and select the drop down for Insert, there is an option for a horizontal line. So we're going to go up and click Insert, and then select the horizontal line. And that creates a nice, clean horizontal line between ingredients and directions. So now our ingredients are looking really well. Let's take a look at the directions. Now, directions are very specific steps in a very specific order. So instead of a bulleted list, a numbered list would fit better here. So we can number each step one at a time. So we're going to select each of the items below directions, each of our different steps, and highlight all of those just by clicking and dragging. And then we're going to select the icon for a numbered list. The icon for the numbered list is just to the left of the bulleted list right here. I'm going to click the numbered list, and it will give me a number for each row. Now, just like the bulleted list, I can click the drop-down arrow next to numbered list, and there are lots of different options there. We can use a combination between numbers and letters. We can use decimals. There's a lot of different things that we can do depending on the outline that we're trying to create. But for our ingredients, numbers are going to work just fine for us, so we're going to leave them there. Now, these are also very squashed together. I'd like to space these out just like we did with the ingredients up above. Because these are already created as a list, there is a special option for spacing inside of a list. So we're going to go back to the line spacing icon on our ribbon. And instead of just changing the line spacing, which is what we did last time up here at the top, we're going to add a space after each list item. This essentially creates the same effect as the line spacing up above, just a different way of doing it, where only the list items are getting the additional spacing. So now the lists are looking pretty good, but our headers and title are a little hard to read. They're the same font size and style as everything else, so they're kind of getting lost. I'd like to make them a little easier for us to identify. So let's start with the title. I'm going to triple click and select the entire title. And then I'd like to move that into the middle of the page. Whenever we're moving the text, either from the left, the middle, or the right, we call that alignment. Alignment is where the text is positioned in the page. So right now we are left aligned, meaning that the text begins at the left margin. What I'd like to do is center this text using a center alignment. So your alignment options are on the ribbon right here. You have left align, center, right, and a special alignment we'll get to later called justify. So let's click the center alignment button and bring our title text into the middle. That looks so much better already. We'd also like to make it stand out, and if you remember, one of the ways that we can make text stand out is to make it thicker by bolding it. So I'm going to select the bold option. We've used that before. And then I'd like to increase the font size, which again is something we've done before. I'm going to make this a size 18. Now that really looks like a title. Let's fix ingredients and directions as well. We're not going to change the size of those because we don't want them to overpower the title. So I'm just going to make them bold so that they stand out a little bit. And instead of clicking the icon this time, I'm going to use the shortcut key. Great, so now that we've completed those changes, we have a recipe that if we were to print it and hand it to someone else, they would be able to easily read and identify all of the different parts of the recipe. And that's really our goal with using a word processing system, is to make something that's easy to read. Now there's one additional feature that I'd like to talk with you about today, which is called word count. Word count isn't really that necessary with something like a cookie recipe, but this is a great place to introduce it. This will come in handy a lot more when we start working with reports and letters and other requirements or other assignments where your teachers often require you to write a certain amount of words. It's nice to know how many words you've written and how many more you've got left to go. So if we want to know how many words are written in this particular document, we can go up to the Tools menu, and one of our tools that's available is called Word Count. So I'm going to select Word Count, and it will pop up and let me know how many pages I've written, how many words I've written, how many characters are there, and how many characters are there if you don't include spaces. Now, if I'm really worried about making sure I get to that certain word count that the teacher is asking for, I can click the little checkbox to continue to display my word count while I'm typing so that I can watch it as I go. For today, though, we're just going to work with this pop-up box. So when you've identified your word count, I'd like you to keep track of that number. In this case, ours is 98. We're going to use that in just a second. So we're going to close this by clicking OK. And now that we have the word count, I want to come to the very bottom of my document, hit Enter, and automatically it's going to generate a new numbered list item because we're currently in a numbered list. So to turn that off, you can either click the icon, you can hit backspace, or you can press Enter, and it will delete that number 9. Now I want to type in the words word count with a colon, and I'm going to record my 98 words. Now, I wanted to check it before I typed all of this because I've now added words, so the count isn't really 98, it's 100 now. Well, 101 if you include the numbers. So I just wanted to record the number before this was typed, and that's really important because on your assignment, if you're in the Canvas course, I will be grading the correct number, which is the number before you type the word count line. Now, just for fun, let's use alignment again. Let's put the word count on the far right of the page. So this time we're going to use a right alignment. So I'll click on that, and we'll bring that alignment to the right side. And then I'm going to triple click the line, and let's underline this one. And I'm going to use the shortcut key for that. Perfect. So now that we've finished this recipe, let's review really quickly what we've learned. In today's video, we've learned how to create bulleted and numbered lists. We've learned how to change spacing either through line spacing or adding spacing in the lists themselves. We've also learned how to create a horizontal line and review some font editing tools that help us to make the recipe a little easier for our viewers to read. To learn more tools and features in the Google Suite family of apps, check out more of my videos on YouTube or visit ToriNorman.com.